If you clicked on this video, I'm going to assume that you at least know the basics behind Overlord. The guy's favorite MMO is shutting down, and he's the last player in his guild as all the others have left. The game shuts down, and suddenly he finds himself actually being his undead Overlord avatar, and that he was transported to another world with all of his NPCs come to life. Now, that's a classic fantasy isekai that is loved by many. That's not what I'm going to be talking about today, though. From what we can gather from various outside media and short snippets of the light novels, we get a pretty good picture of the place Ainz, or Mamanga, or its real name Suzuki Satoru, came from. It was something like a post-apocalyptic world where the environment had been ravaged by corporations and pollution, and people lived within domed cities protected from the outside atmosphere. At the beginning of the story, the year is 2138, 112 years from now, and they have the technology to justify that leap in time. Hello everybody, my name is Nachakeno, and today I'm going to be talking about the technology in Overlord, specifically the tech that allows players to directly interface with Yggdrasil. Many people have misinterpreted these devices as virtual reality headsets, but that would be incorrect. So follow me on this journey as we explore the technology present in this world of Overlord, then look at where that technology is in our world and an estimate of how long it would take to get there. Let's start with defining what Yggdrasil is. The game, I mean. Yggdrasil is a DMMO RPG. That stands for Dive Massively Multiplayer Online Role-Playing Game. You've probably heard of that last part, but what does dive mean? In normal gaming, you would look at the monitor and listen to its sound with headphones or speakers. In a dive game, your brain receives all of that information directly. Your thoughts and neural signals are then used to control the avatar. So, from the player's point of view, they aren't watching their avatar move from first or third person, they actually feel like they are taking all of the actions their avatar is taking. Of course, there are some certain laws and regulations on what can and cannot be done. For instance, some senses like touch are dulled, and smell and taste are banned outright because the government didn't want people losing touch with reality in the virtual world. As well, along the lines of government regulation, the helmet, which many people mistake for a VR headset, is actually a legally required recording device which records and keeps recording in-game for 1 month, at which point it deletes them. In this world, cybercrime is especially scary because a hacker can use a person's neural system as part of a crime, and that recording would be needed to prove their innocence. So, how exactly is all of this data transmitted into the user's brain? Nanomachines, son. From the web novel, which is not canon but can show Maruyama's thinking behind some things, the tech follows the trend of initially being used by the military, then by medicine, then released for consumers. The one that we see is called the Neuron Nano Interface. Satoru's version of the system included a processor which would read electrical signals from his synapses, allowing him thought-based interaction with interfaces. The Neuron Nano Interface wasn't just powered by electricity of the brain. Something called cerebral nanomachines was necessary for running dive technology and were essential for the whole process. According to the Blu-ray Volume 4 bonus novel, Satoru would put an injector into his arm to refill his stock. As if they depleted midway through a gaming session, he would just be kicked out of the game. As well, the narration says that cerebral nanomachines were directly involved in the calculations and computations necessary to make the experience happen. Now let's go over the final detail we get from Overlord. Megacon. Now, what the Megacon is never exactly specified. Just mentions an offhand comment. Is it a supercomputer? An AI? Something Satoru owns or something external? We don't know, so we'll have to make some guesses regarding that. That's pretty much all the detail we get from Overlord about dive technology and what made Yggdrasil possible. So I'd like to take a look at where this technology is in our world, advancements needed to get to the Overlord levels of technology, and an estimate for how long that will take. To actually define it in scientific terms, what Overlord has is a high bandwidth, bidirectional brain-computer interface connected to a networked virtual world platform, and Yggdrasil itself would be a closed-loop neural interface. I know all of that is a lot, so let's go through it piece by piece. A brain-computer interface, or BCI, is a device that measures activity in the nervous system and translates it into commands for an external device. The most famous modern example of this is probably Neuralink. Its first human patient, Nolan Darbaugh, used the implant to control a computer cursor, play online chess, and even play Civilization 6. That's the reading side of the technology. Satoru's processor would basically be an extremely advanced neural decoder, something that looks for patterns linked to actions like moving, turning, grabbing something, or opening a menu. Modern BCIs can already decode some of these basic intentions. Neuralink's version turns motor cortex activity into cursor movement. Other systems let users control robotic arms or prosthetic hands. Meta is also working on a wrist-based neural interface that reads electrical signals going from the brain to the hand before a movement is even visible. It isn't a brain implant, but it's very relevant and marks a significant step towards the tech we've been talking about. This is where the difference between modern tech and Yggdrasil becomes obvious. Right now, most of these systems are basically advanced input devices. It's pretty cool, but it's still closer to replacing a mouse or controller than replacing your entire body. Yggdrasil would need to read enough of the player's intent that walking, fighting, flying, casting spells, using menus, and reacting in real time all feel natural. It wouldn't just be moving a cursor in a certain direction. It would be more like moving this body as if it were actually yours. By high bandwidth and bidirectional, I mean that a lot of information has to move both ways. The brain sends commands outward, and the system sends information back inward. A closed-loop neural interface means that the brain sends commands to a local console. The console communicates with the game server, and the local system turns the game's information back into sensory signals for the brain. If you swing a sword in Yggdrasil, the system needs to read your intent to swing, move the avatar, show you the sword moving, play the sound, and give you some limited feeling of impact. That entire loop has to happen fast enough that it feels like your own body. The much harder half is writing information back into the brain. That is where current technology is nowhere near Overlord. We can do tiny pieces of it today. Cochlear implants can restore some useful sound by electrically stimulating the auditory system. Visual implants and brain stimulation experiments can create flashes, dots, or simple shapes. Some brain interface experiments have created limited artificial touch, like pressure or movement sensations in prosthetic hands. But Yggdrasil would need to take the game data and turn it into a full sensory experience. Detailed vision, directional sound, body awareness, and enough touch to make the avatar feel real. The neuron nano interface is the core technology behind all of this. In modern terms, it would be a permanent implanted brain-computer interface that can both read from and write to the nervous system. That alone is a massive hurdle. Modern implants run into inflammation, scar tissue, signal loss, and long-term reliability problems. Medical patients may accept those risks because a BCI can restore some regular functions, but for healthy consumers to use something like Yggdrasil, the implant would have to be safe, stable, and reliable for decades. The cerebral nanomachines are probably the most science fiction part. Satoru can inject more into his arm when they get low, and they are directly involved in the calculations needed for the dive. The closest real-world comparison would be the injectable bioelectronic devices that can record or stimulate neural activity. Research is moving in that direction, but we are nowhere close to injecting something into your arm that safely passes the blood-brain barrier, integrates with your neural interface, and lets you play a full dive MMO. The neck cable is actually one of the more believable parts of the setup. It would likely be a high-bandwidth wired neural connection, moving data between the implant and an external computer with almost no delay. A full dive system would need that kind of speed. If you moved your hand and the avatar reacted even a fraction of a second later, you would notice, and the illusion would start to break. A future consumer version would probably try to go wireless eventually, but for raw speed, stability, and power, the cable makes sense. The helmet isn't really a VR device. It's more like a legally required black box. It records what happens in virtual spaces, which gives the user evidence if their neural system is used in a cybercrime. In real life, that function might be handled by the game company, the console, or the implant itself. A physical helmet would probably be unnecessary, but the idea behind it is believable. Then there is the Megacon. We can already build supercomputers and AI systems, so the mystery is not whether something powerful like it could exist. The safest guess is that it's probably some kind of external computing endpoint connected to the dive setup, but Overlord never gives us a full explanation. So, how far away are we? We already have fragments of technology of Overlord's 2138, but not the full picture. We can read some neural signals, decode movement and speech, create limited artificial touch, and build better implants than we had years ago. But the main barrier is our lack of understanding of the human brain, not enough to induce visions or senses at a realistic level. Over the next few decades, we'll likely see much better brain-computer interfaces and the first consumer brands hitting the market. Non-invasive at first, then invasive later. As always, the first advancements will come in medicine, with people being able to better control prosthetic limbs with BCI, paraplegics getting more function, etc. A true dive system is much further away, because research and development of something that touches brain functions is going to be regulated to hell and back by every commission on Earth. My optimistic estimate is that we may reach Overlord levels of technology around the time of the current setting, 2100 to 2160, putting 2138 in that range. But remember, this all depends on a lot of breakthroughs in neuroscience, materials, computing, power delivery, and cybersecurity. It isn't just going to take one invention to get us to that level, it's going to take 100 or more years of inventing and innovation, all working together to bring us to that endpoint. Science is already heading towards Yggdrasil, and all we have to do is wait, or work towards it ourselves. Well, that was different from my previous videos. While fairly surface level, because I'm no neurologist, and a bit shorter than others, this is a topic that I find really interesting, being an Overlord fan and all. How artificial intelligence will play into this, if it will speed up the process, is still up in the air, but likely. We have to wait a few years to determine how it affects research speed and innovation. Well, I'm still here. Thank you for watching this video, everyone. This has been Nachakeno, and I bid you a fond farewell. Goodbye.